find that an employer is not reporting or is not following minimum wage law, or they're not following existing overtime regulations, et cetera, do you have any ability to assess?
Through the minimum wage law, yes. Minimum
Okay.
wage and overtime law, we assess fines and penalties. But here again, those fines and penalties that we receive go into the general fund.
Okay, can you give me a dollar amount for fines, fees, penalties, et cetera, that came from things like minimum wage act enforcement, and any of the other things? There's a lack of numbers here in the written testimony. I'm looking to.
Well, for the Child Labor Act, we received approximately $73,000 in fines and penalties. When I say we, that money goes into the general fund. Minimum wage and overtime, fines collected is approximately $1.7 million. Here again, the department doesn't receive any of it. Wage payment collection, fines collected, approximately $2.3 million. Here again, the department does not see any of that.
What was the last category there?
Wage payment and collection law.
Okay.
We can get all this information.
Okay.
Certainly. And there are others.
Right. And this is a good starting point. Just glancing at this, I've got over $4 million in enforcement efforts, not to mention the $18.85 million in inspections for the Bureau of Occupational Industrial Safety, which I realize a lot of that is just making sure the elevators are operating. Where my concern lies is I've seen this happen in my years here as a legislator. I've seen agencies move from what I'll call compliance helpers to being compliance driven. And the stories are out there, and the different agencies have gained reputations in the communities and throughout Pennsylvania on this. But I'm increasingly hearing from employers that are telling me, they're not telling me where I'm going wrong, they're just coming and whacking me. The Department of Agriculture historically has had a phenomenal reputation for what I'll call embracing the constituent, if you will, and saying, look, here's where you're going wrong, and here's how we're going to help bring you into compliance so you can thrive. Businesses that I'm speaking with and my colleagues are speaking with are telling me that's not happening in the Department of Labor, that it's more of a hammer. It's not, an embrace of, hey, let's help you figure out where you went wrong with the child labor law. And, these numbers, I'd be curious to know not just what the numbers are, but how much they've risen over the years. So I'd love to see a full report on that. And as labor chairman, I intend to follow up with a hearing if necessary. But
we can make sure you get that information.
It's just that environment that I'm really, really concerned about. Employer after employer is telling me there's an adversarial relationship. That's not how we bring businesses to Pennsylvania. That's not how we keep them here. We need to do a better job of bringing them into compliance without smacking them with the fees and the fines. We need to help them thrive rather than figuring out ways to punish them when they have a misstep. Arguably, you have a team of lawyers that helps you guys figure out the ins and outs of legislation. Businesses trying to comply, they don't have that luxury. We need to do better at reaching out to them in the way that the Department of Agriculture has historically done, and I'd love to hear your plans for that happening. I'm hoping that the numbers I'm seeing for additional compliance inspectors and things like that, I'm hoping that you'll take those roles and turn them into compliance officers that are not, writing the fines and fees and looking for the aha moment, but rather are saying, here's how you come along and here's how you become a compliant business in Pennsylvania.
We are not in the business of discouraging business in Pennsylvania. That's not what we want to do. We understand that we don't write the laws. We do apply them. We understand that we do have some latitude, but we have to do what we are legally compelled to do. And we certainly want to create the right working relationship with businesses. We're in it to protect the good guys. We want to make sure that people that do it right have a fair and level playing field. Those who are doing it wrong, if they're willing to correct their ways, that's great. We want to see that happen. But we are going to enforce the laws that we have before us.
Well, on the issue of not writing the laws, I trust that that would also apply to the overtime regulations that go far and above what I believe the statutory authority is. We've expressed concerns about that. I won't go into it. Some have talked about that on some level, but that exceeds both the intent of the legislation that authorizes regulations. It goes over and above what the federal changes have made, and I think you have exceeded your authority in that capacity. So that is my comment on that particular issue.
We're very supportive of the work that we did, obviously, with the overtime regs. If the courts want to tell us otherwise, we'll see where that goes. But we're very comfortable with the work we did, very happy with the work we did on the regs.
And Chairman Cox, the Bureau of Labor Law Compliance does do outreach, does do visits, does do educational things. We'll put together a list of the educational things that they've done over the years also for your review.
I would suggest that if the fines and fees and so forth are increasing year after year, this is my final comment, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I would suggest that if the fines and fees are increasing year after year, that those outreach efforts are not significant enough. If you have significant outreach efforts, you should see a diminishing number of people being fined and hit with fees. Thank you.
Would disagree with that, but I'd be happy to talk to you aside from that. I think it's an indication of the work that we're doing.